objections. Let's begin. We have to begin with space aliens. Where else do you begin? Interestingly enough, serious scientists have raised this. Nobel laureates Francis Crick and Leslie Orgel. Now, again, he was the one who is one of the, if not the premier, origin of life specialist. Both of them published a paper together back in the 80s saying that life was created through a process called directed panspermia. Directed panspermia. Now, I put playfully with a question mark after it because I don't know how serious they were when they put this forth. I will say, though, Crick said this twice. He said it first in 1973 with Orgel, and again in 1980s with this book, Life Itself. So they said that either undirected panspermia, well, pan meaning everything, and spermia meaning life, undirected panspermia would mean that meteorites came from other parts of the universe, traveled to Earth, gave us the building blocks of life, and maybe even DNA and organelles, and they survived on these asteroids. That'd be undirected. That's just meteorites going to the different parts of the universe. They landed on Earth, they're here. Maybe it was during the Hadean era, I don't know. And we got the building blocks of life that way. Incidentally, we have meteorites that do have certain amino acids on them. And some people have said, well, that's where we got the origin of life. Okay, directed panspermia would be Ridley Scott. This is from, what's that series? It's the Alien series, but the most recent is Prometheus, thank you. I really enjoyed that film. I know it's not a very, or is it a Christian film? I don't know, it's very confusing. I think he's confused, Ridley Scott, but hope he doesn't take offense to that. He probably doesn't care what I think. Anyways, so this would be the idea that aliens traveled to Earth, seeded the planet intentionally because they're extraterrestrial, intelligent life. That was the view of Francis Crick and Leslie Orgel. Again, I don't know how serious they were, but that was their view. Richard Dawkins, the atheist, also speculated about this view. Here's one of the scenes from the movie Expelled, No Intelligence Allowed, where he expounds on this. Check it out.
Well, then how did it get created?
Well, by a very slow process.
Well, how did it start?
Nobody knows how it started. We know the kind of event that it must have been. We know the sort of event that must have happened for the origin of life.
And what was that?
It was the origin of the first self-replicating molecule.
Right, how did that happen?
I told you we don't know.
So you have no idea how it started?
No, nor has anybody.
Nor has anyone else. What do you think is the possibility that intelligent design might turn out to be the answer to some issues in genetics or in evolution?
It could come about in the following way. It could be that at some earlier time, somewhere in the universe, a civilization evolved by probably some kind of Darwinian means to a very, very high level of technology and designed a form of life that they seeded onto perhaps this planet. Now, that is a possibility and an intriguing possibility. And I suppose it's possible that you might find evidence for that if you look at the details of biochemistry and molecular biology. You might find a signature of some sort of designer.
Wait a second. Richard Dawkins thought intelligent design might be a legitimate pursuit?
And that designer could well be a higher intelligence from elsewhere in the universe.
So Professor Dawkins was not against intelligent design, just certain types of designers, such as God.
Kind of an interesting point he's making there, Ben Stein. Why is it that he's saying you could discover signs of intelligence in the cell, a signature in the cell, is what he said, that could show that it was an intelligent cause, but it would have to be an alien of some kind. Yeah. Well, this admits the need for a designer. This only shows that this argument actually is cogent. See, an argument needs to be valid, which means that internally it's consistent. It needs to be sound, meaning that each premise is at least 51% probable. And then from there you could say that's a good argument. But is it cogent? Is it persuasive? This would show the fact that somebody of Leslie Orgel's or Francis Crick, who helped discover DNA, when you have scientists like this honestly saying spacemen came to Earth and seeded the planet with the first life, when you have people of their stripe saying that, you've got to wonder if we have a problem with the origin of life studies, that there is some big lacuna in our thinking that is just not being explained. And we're the scientists looking at the magnets on the fridge saying, what natural cause could explain this? Was it the wind? Was it the dog? Was it the force of slant? It's not any of those forces. It's design, and even he is admitting that. To say that it can only be a natural designer is metaphysically prejudicial, metaphysically prejudiced. This is where Alvin Plantinga comes in his great book, Where the Conflict Really Lies. Alvin Plantinga, in the estimation of William Lane Craig, Alvin Plantinga is the greatest living Christian philosopher. Now, when William Lane Craig says that you're the greatest living Christian philosopher, that makes you the greatest living Christian philosopher, right? Alvin Plantinga wrote this book entitled, Where the Conflict Really Lies. Is it God and science? Well, he was interviewed on NPR. I could tell the interviewer had not read the book, okay? Because she kept saying, is it God and science? Is that where the conflict really lies? And Plantinga, as brilliant as he is not the best speaker. He's got a great voice. He's got this rich baritone voice that could either just rivet you or put you to sleep, but he's not the best speaker. So he went on to describe in the interview, the conflict is not between God and science. The conflict is between God and naturalism. The thought that there's only nature and nothing beyond it. Of course that's the conflict. If you believe in naturalism, if you believe in naturalism, you can't believe in God. And if you believe in God, you can't believe in naturalism. However, if you believe in God and you believe in science, Plantinga argues in this book, there is no difficulty with the two. The question just is it a natural cause or is there a supernatural cause? Was there natural processes or was there a mind? And Plantinga just argues, why wouldn't we be open to reasonable explanations that have the most explanatory power and the most explanatory scope? That's his point. He's not arguing for any scientific argument. He's just showing the problem is not God and science. The problem is God and naturalism. Now, if you really want to dig deep into this question of did space aliens bring life to Earth, you should do yourself a favor. Pick up Dr. Hugh Ross's book, Lights in the Sky and Little Green Men. It's co-authored with Kenneth Samples and Mark Clark. But Ross is really the engine behind this book. Hugh Ross is an astronomer, but before he went into vocational ministry, I was going to say full-time ministry. We're all full-time ministers. Vocational ministry means he gets paid for it. That's the difference. When he went into vocational ministry in this ministry of apologetics, before that, he worked at Caltech. And this guy really is brilliant when it comes to the science. I do have some disagreements over interpretation of Genesis and so forth, but for the most part, this guy is, he is the bee's knees, as we like to say, the cat's pajamas, if you will. All right, he says this in his book. He says only 0.1% of stars in the universe have planets. So right there, we are shortening down. Now, wait a minute. We have 200 billion galaxies, and each one has about 200 billion stars. So that's, wow, that's a lot. But, and only 0.1%, that's still a lot of planets out there. However, in that smaller pool of planets, Ross says the odds of a habitable planet for life is 10 to the 174th power. Now, if you want to dig into this deeper, go ahead. You can pick up Guillermo Gonzalez's book, Privileged Planet, or Hugh Ross's book, The Improbable Planet. And he'll go through how he gets that number, why it's so difficult to find an exoplanet or a habitable planet. And I know in the media are always sharing in popular science, oh, we found a planet like Earth. They mean it's like in some respect close to Earth. But meeting all these various criteria, maybe it meets one criterion, but not all the criteria that you would need for a habitable planet. Ross also points out the difficulties with interstellar travel. This is in chapter 5, I think, somewhere around there. He says the scale of space, I think the illustration he uses is the size of the sun, if that was the size of an orange. To move from our solar system to the nearest solar system would be like moving from Los Angeles to New York, just to give you the scale of just how far this really is. And our sun can fit, I don't know how many millions of Earths inside of it, and just to show the scale that we're speaking of here. To add insult to injury, the speed of travel is very, very, very difficult. To energize a spaceship, to travel in interstellar space, across space, from one planet to another, the energy required is absolutely unfathomable, and he talks all about that. And dangerous. We can't go at the speed of light because that would give you infinite density and mass to be able to move that. So it's got to be somewhere slower, which means a lot more energy to speed up that spacecraft. But as you approach the speed of light, anything that gets in the way is going to be horrifically dangerous to your spacecraft. So if you come across any kind of debris, if you come across radiation, anything tiny, moving anywhere near the speed of light, it's going to completely rip to shreds your spacecraft. He said the fastest you could go is about 1% to be safe. And to take that long, that would mean that a trip that started today wouldn't end for hundreds of thousands of years, which would mean that this is an intergenerational space trip. So I get on the trip with my wife, and we do a Noah's Ark kind of a thing. We get maybe 100 couples, but then again we got to keep the ship small. But whatever, we're in science fiction world here, so we get 100 couples, and then we breed, and then they take over this, and we teach them all the mechanics, and hopefully they're all smart and astronauts and brilliant. Like they're like perfect looking and in perfect shape, and also like geniuses, which is astronauts, right? So all of our kids are perfect, but then their kids are that way. But then we're all interbreeding, right, with each other, so that's a problem. He gets into like freezing eggs from other people. So now we're doing in vitro fertilization on a spaceship, moving at 1/100th of the speed of light. Then he gets into the point, what if, you're 10 generations in and the kids are like, this was mom and great-great-great-granddad's idea. I don't want to do this mission. I'm going back home. And to keep all the amount of food and everything on there just to get here to see lovely old us. He says by far it would be more likely that they would send robots. Anyways, you got to read the book. It's pretty interesting. Now, everything I just said, for people that have been raised like myself on science fiction, you're like, nuh-uh, there's wormholes, there's warp drive, there's all these things. And you're like, we just don't know. You don't know. You have not seen the newest science fiction film where they do this. Okay, I know, like, we're so ingrained to think that you can do this, but we're talking to a physicist and astronomer from Caltech. And he's just like, no, you don't know what you're talking about, and that's his point here.